What if one of the smallest coins in your pocket has been hiding a story that most people never noticed? British one-penny coins may seem ordinary, especially after years of circulation, but certain dates and tiny details can make collectors take a much closer look. Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today's countdown features 4 United Kingdom one-penny coins. 1995, no mint mark. 1998, no mint mark. 1988, no mint mark. 1990, no mint mark. Struck in bronze at the Royal Mint, Lantricent, these classic pennies feature the iconic portcullis with chains reverse design. Many surviving examples are dirty, scratched, worn, and heavily circulated, but that's exactly why examining the details matters. Collectors can look for unusual varieties, minting errors, striking anomalies, die differences, and other characteristics that may make a particular coin stand out from millions of ordinary examples. So before you spend or throw away an old British penny, turn it over and check it carefully. Stay until the end, because the final coin has a detail you definitely won't want to overlook. Now, let's uncover coin number 1. There is a strange reason some old British pennies deserve a second look, and it has nothing to do with how shiny they are. Sometimes, the clue is buried in the design itself. Take a worn 1995 United Kingdom one penny. It may look almost worthless. The surface can be dark and dirty. The edges can be battered. The bronze can show decades of handling. And yet, before you throw it back into a change jar, there are a few details worth investigating. Start with the reverse. There it is. The portcullis with chains. A crown portcullis surrounded by chains, representing an important symbol of British heraldry. Below it is the denomination, 1 penny, with the numeral 1 beneath. This reverse design was created by Christopher Ironside and was used on British 1p coins from 1982 through 2008. Now turn the coin over. You should see Queen Elizabeth II. The portrait used on your 1995 penny was the Raphael Maklauf portrait, introduced on UK's circulating coins in 1985 and used until 1997. Then comes the detail that starts the investigation. 1995. That date places the coin firmly inside the Maklauf portrait era. But here's the important reality. A 1995 penny is not automatically rare simply because it is several decades old. Millions of ordinary British pennies were produced during this period, and a heavily circulated example can have little premium over face value. So we're not going to make the mistake of calling every old penny a hidden fortune. Instead, we're going to look for what collectors actually care about. Condition, varieties, errors, die characteristics, and unusual features that can be traced back to the minting process. Now take a close look at that portcullis. Don't just glance at it. Zoom in. Look at the vertical bars. Look at where the bars meet. Study the surrounding details. Then compare your coin with another normal 1995 1p. Why? Because the portcullis design has been studied by collectors for different die characteristics and varieties. And this is exactly where a magnifying glass becomes more useful than a price list. You are not searching for something that simply looks strange. You're searching for something that is different for a specific reason. That's a huge distinction. A scratch across the portcullis? Probably circulation damage. A dent near the rim? Probably damage. A dark patch? Could simply be environmental toning or dirt. But a feature that repeats in a consistent position and matches a documented die characteristic? Now you've got something worth researching. And there's another fascinating detail about this coin. The traditional UK 1p was made from bronze, an alloy containing copper, zinc and tin. The Royal Mint states the traditional bronze composition as approximately 97% copper, 2.5% zinc and 0.5% tin. That matters because the United Kingdom later changed the composition of its 1p and 2p coins. From September 1992, these denominations began being made from copper-plated steel instead of traditional bronze. So your 1995 penny sits right inside an important period of British coin production history. And that gives you another clue to investigate. Copper-plated steel coins are attracted to a magnet because of their steel core. Traditional bronze coins are not magnetic. But don't start assuming that every 1995 penny that sticks, or doesn't stick, is automatically rare. The magnet test is useful for identifying composition, not for proving value. That's an important distinction. And because your coin is described as dirty, worn, and heavily circulated, don't try to improve its appearance before examining it. Oh, polishing. No metal cleaner. No vinegar experiment. No abrasive rubbing. No scraping. Leave the surface exactly as you found it. A cleaned coin can lose important original surface characteristics and become harder to evaluate properly. Instead, photograph it. Get a close-up of the date. Then photograph the Queen's portrait. Then the portcullis. And finally, take a clear picture of the entire reverse. Now compare. Not with a random social media photograph. Compare it with reliable references. Because the real mystery isn't, is every 1995 penny valuable? It isn't. The real mystery is, does this particular 1995 penny have something unusual that most examples don't? And that's a much more interesting question. Because when you put an ordinary worn penny under magnification, sometimes the coin suddenly stops looking ordinary. The tiny details become visible. The shape of the design becomes clearer. The condition becomes easier to judge. And the difference between damage and a genuine mint characteristic becomes much easier to investigate. So before you dismiss that battered 1995 penny, look again. Because its value may not be hiding in its age. It may be hiding in a tiny detail you've never noticed before. Now let's look at the 1995 penny from a collector's perspective, because this is where the coin becomes more interesting than its face value suggests. The Royal Mint's records show that 303,314,000 1995 1p coins entered circulation. That is a substantial mintage. So an ordinary worn example should not automatically be treated as a major rarity. But there is a fascinating detail hidden in the reverse design. Look at the portcullis. Don't focus only on the crown. Look at the places where the vertical bars meet the horizontal bars. Collectors have identified different portcullis die characteristics on British decimal pennies. For the 1995 to 1997 period, the commonly catalogued reverse type is associated with encircled junctions rather than the earlier raised dot arrangement. That gives you something much more useful than simply asking whether the penny is old. You now have a specific area to inspect. Take a magnifying glass. Look at the portcullis junctions. Then compare them with a trusted reference image. If the detail matches the normal 1995 type, that's perfectly fine. If you think you've discovered something different, don't immediately call it an error. Photograph it, compare it, research it, and if necessary, have it examined by someone experienced in British decimal varieties. That's the difference between coin hunting and simply guessing. Now let's talk about the material. Your 1995 circulation penny belongs to the traditional bronze era of the UK 1p. The Royal Mint states that bronze 1p coins were approximately 97% copper, 2.5% zinc and 0.5% tin, and that the move to copper-plated steel began in September 1992. That makes one thing especially interesting about your four dates. You have 1995, 1998, 1988, 1990. The 1995, 1988, and 1990 examples are from the older Bronze era. At first glance, A 1998 British 1p looks like one of the most ordinary coins imaginable. But there is a detail that immediately separates it from the earlier pennies in this video. The metal changed. By 1998, Britain's circulating 1p had moved into the copper-plated steel era. The Royal Mint says the composition changed from bronze to copper-plated steel in September 1992 because of rising metal costs. The newer coins use a mild steel core coated with copper, which makes them magnetic. So take your 1998 penny. It's dirty. It's worn. Maybe the copper-colored surface has darkened after years of circulation. Now turn it over. There is the familiar crown portcullis with chains. Above it, 1 penny. And beneath, 1. That famous reverse was designed by Christopher Ironside and remained on the British 1p until the redesign of 2008. But flip the coin back over again. This time, look carefully at the portrait. The 1998 penny marks another major transition. It carries the third portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, created by Ian Rank-Broadley. The Royal Mint records the Rank-Broadley portrait as beginning on the 1p in 1998. So within a single year, you're looking at two important changes. A new portrait. A new chapter in the coin's manufacturing history. And there's something else hiding in plain sight. Look underneath the Queen's portrait. You should see the initials. RB. Those initials identify Ian Rank-Broadley, the designer of the obverse portrait. Now let's talk about rarity. The 1998 1p had a circulation mintage of approximately 739,770,000. That's an enormous number. So a normal, heavily circulated 1998 penny isn't automatically a rare treasure. But that doesn't mean there's nothing worth examining. Quite the opposite. This is where you start looking at specific characteristics. First, is the coin actually magnetic? Because the normal 1998 circulation issue is copper-plated steel. Place a magnet near it. If it responds to the magnet, that agrees with its expected steel core. The Royal Mint specifically describes the post-1992 copper-plated steel 1p as magnetic. But don't make the mistake of thinking magnetic equals rare. No. Magnetism simply tells you something about the composition. It doesn't establish collector value. Now inspect the weight. A standard 1998 1p is approximately 3.56 grams, with a diameter around 20.3 millimeters and a plain edge. If your coin is significantly different, don't immediately celebrate. Check the scale. Check for damage. Check whether dirt or corrosion is affecting the measurement. And most importantly, compare it with another genuine 1998 penny. Now comes the part that can make this little coin genuinely fascinating. Look at the portcullis junctions. The bars cross one another throughout the design. Study those meeting points under magnification. Collectors have documented different portcullis reverse die characteristics, including differences in how the junctions of the bars are represented. But here's the rule. A difference must be identified correctly before it becomes a variety. Don't call every unusual-looking mark an error. A scratch could have happened in circulation. A dent could have happened years after the coin left the mint. A weak-looking detail could simply be wear. And dirt can make a normal feature look completely strange. So photograph first. Compare second. Identify third. And only then start talking about rarity. There's another interesting feature on this particular date. The 1998 penny belongs to the first year of the Ian Rank-Broadley portrait on the 1p. That alone gives it an important place in British decimal coin history. But don't confuse historical importance with high monetary value. Those are two completely different things. A coin can be historically interesting without being expensive. And that's exactly why collectors examine the details. Now, because your example is described as dirty, worn, and heavily circulated, there is one thing I want you to avoid completely. Don't polish it. Don't scrub the copper surface. Don't use vinegar. Don't use abrasive paste. Don't scrape the portcullis. Don't try to make it look new. If the coin has something unusual on its surface, cleaning could destroy evidence that helps identify what happened to it. Instead, leave it alone. Take a clear photo of the obverse. Take a photo of the reverse. Take a close-up of the IRB initials. Photograph the date. Then examine the portcullis under magnification. And finally, try the magnet test. Because this 1998 penny may look like nothing more than an old piece of pocket change. But it represents a remarkable transition. New portrait, new metal, new chapter in British decimal coinage. And sometimes, the most interesting part of an ordinary coin isn't the price attached to it. It's the moment you realize you've been holding a piece of a major change in British coin history without even knowing it. The 1998 British 1p has a story that is easy to miss because the coin itself looks so ordinary. But this particular year sits at the beginning of a new portrait era and firmly inside the copper-plated steel period of British decimal coinage. The Royal Mint records the Ian Rank Broadley portrait from 1998 onward, while copper-plated steel had replaced bronze for circulating 1p coins from September 1992. That makes the 1998 date a useful dividing line when you're sorting older British pennies. There's a small detail many people never notice. Under Queen Elizabeth II portrait are the initials IRB. Those letters belong to Ian Rank Broadley, the designer of the portrait introduced on the 1p in 1998. So if you're holding a 1998 penny, you're looking at the first year of a new obverse portrait design. Now flip it over. The reverse has changed. You still have Christopher Ironside's famous crown portcullis with chains, with 1 penny above the numeral 1. And that creates an interesting contrast. New portrait on the front. Familiar portcullis on the back. Now let's get to the number that can make a collector pause. The 1998 circulation mintage was approximately 739,770,000. That's enormous. So a heavily circulated 1998 1p shouldn't automatically be described as an ultra-rare coin. The interesting question is whether your individual example has something outside the ordinary issue. This is one of the easiest checks you can perform. The normal 1998 circulation penny is copper-plated steel, with a mild steel core beneath the copper-colored exterior. The Royal Mint confirms that these coins are magnetic. Its standard specifications are approximately weight, 3.56 grams, diameter, 20.3 millimeters, thickness, 1.65 millimeters. Some British pennies are remembered because they're scarce. The 1988 1 penny is interesting for a different reason. It looks incredibly ordinary, but it sits inside one of the biggest production years of the entire decimal 1p series. The Royal Mint specifications show that the traditional bronze 1p used a 97% copper, 2.5% zinc and 0.5% tin composition, with a 20.3 mm diameter and plain edge. The bronze composition continued through September 1992. And the 1988 issue was produced in enormous numbers. Approximately 793,492,000 1988 1p coins were struck for circulation. So if your coin is dirty, scratched and heavily worn, the date by itself doesn't make it a rare jackpot. But that's exactly why we need to look beyond the date. Turn the coin over. The reverse shows the crown portcullis with chains. Above it, 1 penny. And underneath, 1. The portcullis design was created by Christopher Ironside and was used on British 1p coins from 1971 through 2008. Now turn the penny back to the obverse. There is Queen Elizabeth II. The 1988 issue carries the Raphael Maklauf portrait, part of the 1985 to 1997 portrait period. Look beneath the portrait. You'll see the designer's initials, RDM. That tiny detail is easy to overlook when the coin is covered in years of circulation grime. And this is where your inspection begins. Don't stare at the whole coin. Break it down. Look at the date. Look at the portrait. Look at the RDM initials. Then turn it over and inspect the portcullis. Especially examine the points where the bars intersect. British decimal penny references document different portcullis reverse die characteristics, including differences in the appearance of the junctions between the bars. But don't make a mistake that catches many new collectors. A strange-looking mark isn't automatically a valuable variety. A scratch can happen after the coin leaves the mint. A dent can come from decades of circulation. A weak feature can simply be the result of wear. And dirt can make perfectly normal details appear unusual. So if something catches your eye, don't touch it. Don't scrape it. Don't polish it. Photograph it first. Now there's another interesting reason to compare this 1988 penny with the 1995 coin from earlier. Both are from the traditional bronze era. But the 1998 penny in this same video is different. By 1998, the Royal Mint had moved the circulating 1p to copper-plated steel, with a mild steel core beneath the copper coating. Those later coins are magnetic. That means your 4 dates aren't all made from identical material. 1988, bronze. 1990, bronze. 1995, bronze. 1998, copper-plated steel. That's a surprisingly interesting little timeline hidden inside 4 ordinary-looking pennies. And there's a simple test you can use. Normal 1988 bronze penny should not behave like the later copper-plated steel issues. So if you're sorting a group of old British pennies, a magnet can help separate the two eras. But don't confuse composition with rarity. A magnet test can tell you something about the metal. It cannot tell you that the coin is worth a fortune. That's why we combine several clues: date, design, composition, condition, possible varieties, possible mint errors, and authentication when necessary. Now look at your coin's condition. You've described it as dirty, worn, and heavily circulated. That means we should be realistic. The surfaces may have lost their original color. The high points of the portrait may be flattened. The portcullis may show scratches. The rim may have contact marks. None of those things automatically create collector value. In fact, the published guide information for ordinary 1988 pennies generally shows relatively modest values, with better preserved or special examples forming a different category. So the real question isn't, is a 1988 penny old enough to be valuable? It's, does this particular 1988 penny have something unusual? That's the question a serious collector would ask. And there is one final warning before you continue inspecting it. Don't try to turn the bronze bright orange. Don't use vinegar. Don't use metal polish. Don't rub it with an abrasive cloth. Don't scrape the portcullis. The worn surface may not look attractive, but it is part of the coin's history. Preserve it. Photograph it. Magnify it. Compare it. Then investigate. Because a coin doesn't have to look beautiful to be interesting. Sometimes the ugliest coin in the jar is the one that makes you stop, look closer, and wonder, what exactly am I looking at? And that's where the story of this 1988 British 1 penny really begins. Now comes the part that can completely change how you look at a 1988 British 1p. Not because the coin suddenly becomes rare, but because this date gives us several clues that can be checked independently. First, let's settle the numbers. The 1988 circulation mintage was approximately 793,492,000 coins. That makes it a very common date rather than a scarce one. So if your example is dirty, worn, and heavily circulated, the date itself isn't enough to create a major premium. Current reference data also shows ordinary circulated examples generally remain around face value territory, while better preserved examples can bring modest premiums. But now, look at the coin again. The reverse features Christopher Ironside's crown portcullis with chains. Instead of staring at the entire design, concentrate on the tiny junction details where the portcullis bars meet. Decimal penny references document different portcullis die characteristics, including differences involving the appearance of the junction details. This is exactly the kind of feature that should be compared, not guessed. If your coin doesn't match your reference, don't immediately call it rare. Take a macro photograph. Compare several examples. Check whether you're looking at a genuine die characteristic, normal wear, or damage that happened after the coin entered circulation. That distinction is everything. Our 1988 penny is from the Bronze era. NGC lists the 1988 UK penny as bronze, weighing approximately 3.56 grams and measuring 20.32 millimeters. The obverse is the Raphael Maklauf portrait, while the portcullis reverse was designed by Christopher Ironside. A separate reference gives the traditional bronze composition as approximately 97% copper, 2.5% zinc, 0.5% tin. That's important because your 1998 penny from this same video belongs to a completely different material era. A 1990 British 1 penny can disappear into a handful of loose change without anyone giving it a second thought. But this particular penny comes from a fascinating period in British coinage, when the familiar portcullis reverse was still being used and Queen Elizabeth II was represented by the Raphael Maklauf portrait. And if your example is dirty, worn and heavily circulated, that makes the investigation even more interesting. Start with the date. 1990. The Royal Mint's records show that the 1p at this time was still made from traditional bronze, before the later switch to copper-plated steel. The bronze specification was approximately 97% copper, 2.5% zinc, and 0.5% tin. Now turn the coin over. The reverse immediately gives it away. A crown portcullis with chains dominates the center. Above it, 1 penny. And underneath, 1. This reverse was designed by Christopher Ironside and remained on the 1p until the major redesign in 2008. To flip it back, there's Queen Elizabeth II. The portrait is the second portrait, created by Raphael Maklauf and used on circulating 1p coins from 1985 through 1997. And beneath the portrait are the small initials, RDM. On a clean coin, they're easy to identify. On a heavily circulated penny, they can almost disappear. That's why magnification is so useful. Now here's something that puts the 1990 date into perspective. The recorded circulation mintage was approximately 529,047,500 coins. That's more than 500 million pieces. So if you've got a worn 1990 penny, the date alone doesn't make it a rare coin. But there is a much better question to ask. Does your individual coin have a feature that isn't normal for the date? That's where the investigation starts. Don't just admire the design. Zoom into the places where the vertical and horizontal bars meet. Researchers have documented different portcullis reverse die characteristics, including differences in the tiny details at these junctions. One documented system distinguishes dies where the junctions appear as raised dots from those where they appear as incused circles. That doesn't mean every 1990 penny with a strange-looking junction is rare. It means you now have a specific diagnostic area to examine. And that is much better than searching for random scratches, because a scratch can happen anywhere. A die characteristic follows a repeatable pattern. So compare your portcullis carefully with a confirmed example. If it matches, that's normal. If it looks different, take photographs before doing anything else. Because the 1990 penny belongs to the Bronze era, its expected metal is different from the later copper-plated steel 1p. The Royal Mint confirms that bronze was used until September 1992, when copper-plated steel became the normal circulation composition. That means your 1990 penny should normally be non-magnetic. A simple magnet can therefore be useful as a preliminary check. But remember, non-magnetic does not equal rare. It's simply consistent with bronze. And don't try to prove rarity by damaging the coin or scratching through its surface. The coin already contains all the evidence you need. Standard British 1p from this period measures about 20.3 millimeters and weighs approximately 3.56 grams, with a plain edge. If your coin differs slightly, don't panic. Old coins can accumulate dirt and wear. Scales can vary, and damage can affect measurements. Use specifications as a comparison tool, not as automatic proof of an error. Now let's talk about the condition you described. Your penny is dirty, worn, heavily circulated. That means the most likely explanation for unusual marks is ordinary circulation damage. Years of contact with other coins can create scratches. Hard surfaces can produce dents. Friction can flatten the highest points. And oxidation can change the color of bronze. None of these things automatically create collector value. That's why a serious investigation starts with identification before valuation. First determine what the coin is. Then determine whether it's normal. Then investigate anything unusual. Only after that should you ask about value. And there is one rule you should follow from the beginning. Don't polish the bronze. Don't use vinegar. Don't use metal cleaner. Don't scrape the portcullis. Don't rub away the dark areas. A worn coin cannot be transformed into an uncirculated coin by cleaning. You can only alter the surface. Instead, preserve it exactly as you found it. Photograph the obverse. Photograph the reverse. Zoom in on the 1990 date. Zoom in on the RDM initials. Then study the portcullis junctions. Because sometimes, the most interesting discovery isn't a giant error that jumps out immediately. It's a tiny detail that only becomes visible when someone finally decides to look closely. Here's where the 1990 British 1p becomes a much more useful coin to study. The first thing to understand is that the date itself isn't exceptionally scarce. Around 529,047,500 circulation pieces were produced, so a normal worn example is generally not a high-value rarity. That doesn't make the coin boring. It means the details matter more than the date. The crown portcullis with chains was designed by Christopher Ironside and remained the standard reverse design through this period. Now concentrate on the points where the bars cross. This is one of the areas collectors examine when studying portcullis die characteristics. Documented research distinguishes portcullis types by the appearance of these tiny junction details. That gives you a practical place to begin. Don't search randomly across the coin. Pick one feature. Magnify it. Compare it with a confirmed example. Then decide whether you're looking at a normal die characteristic, circulation damage, or something that genuinely deserves further research. The 1990 penny is a bronze issue. Its published specifications are approximately 97% copper, 2.5% zinc, 0.5% tin, 3.56 grams, 20.3 millimeters diameter, plain edge. That makes it very different from the later copper-plated steel pennies in your collection. So if you have the 1990 and 1998 coins together, you've actually got a simple demonstration of Britain's changing coin production technology. The 1990 is bronze. The 1998 circulation issue is copper-plated steel. That's a much more interesting comparison than simply asking which date is older. Money bag, what about the value? This is where realistic expectations matter. Current guide information shows that circulated 1990 pennies are generally around face value, while better preserved examples can have modest premiums.